Before we get started, some gratitude to our members on Patreon. Now more than ever, we need your support as we head into 2026. We've been your inside guide for what to know and where to go for more than 1,800 episodes. And if you can, consider getting a stylish sticker set, a rocks glass, and our undying thanks for supporting the show. It really makes a huge difference. And thanks to Tim, Amy, and Christine for joining us. Join us at patreon.com/dailydetroit. That's patreon.com/dailydetroit. Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is a blustery Monday, December 15th, 2025. I am Jer Stays, coming to you from our studio at Techtown. You know, I always keep it straight with you about what's normal and what's not normal. What are changes that are happening that we need to pay attention to? And what do we need to it's the hype cycle, right? The core of what we're going to talk about today is that State House Speaker Matt Hall and House Republicans used an obscure work project provision to unilaterally lapse or pull about $645 million in unspent but previously approved funds that people were counting on. When I say people, I mean people in communities all over the state, nonprofits, and others, where the state had already agreed to spend this money. Things were already underway. If a deal is a deal and then it's not a deal, then that breaks trust in the entire system. So our guest, Steve Watson, partner and COO at Watson & Yates, a consulting firm here in Detroit, he wrote a great Substack post called Speaker Hall's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Michigan House Speaker Matt Hall cancels $645 million in state funding. This is wild to me, Steve, because I thought the budget was settled. I thought things were happening. I didn't even understand when this came across my desk late last week that this could even happen. So what on earth is happening, Steve?
So hi, Jer. Thanks for having me on the show. It shocked Lansing last Wednesday evening. I saw the news alert pop up on my phone and immediately had to dive into it. As you said, it's an obscure provision in the Management and Budget Act, this thing called work project designations, which is how you allow an appropriation to continue past the fiscal year in which it was appropriated. The state fiscal year just ended September 30th. And as part of a routine process of closing the books out for the prior fiscal year, the State Budget Office requested that certain appropriations that are for multi-year projects continue into the new year. It went before the House and Senate Appropriations Committees. And the big surprise was the House Appropriations Committee, all by itself, unilaterally canceled $645 million worth of over $2 billion in appropriations to continue, something that has either never been done before or very rarely done in the past. And it allowed them to end appropriations that were approved over a year and a half ago when Democrats controlled both houses of the state legislature, the budget that was passed back in July of 2024. So this was really going back and canceling budget items that were settled quite a while ago.
Key to that is that a lot of these budget items are currently in process, right? So these are buildings getting built. These are infrastructure or, say, fire trucks that are on order, that kind of stuff. How can that happen?
Yeah, it's part of what shocked everyone was that ordinarily an appropriation is passed and then the state writes a grant agreement with a local government, a nonprofit, whoever's the recipient of the line item, and then they start spending on their project. They enter into contracts. They start spending, in most cases, their own money first, waiting to be reimbursed by the state. And so in a lot of cases, some recipients may be out of pocket hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, and now they've had the rug pulled out from under them and don't know if they're going to get paid back. Right now, it's not 100% clear what all projects were canceled. The information is scarce right now. The state budget office says they're still reviewing everything. Frankly, what was really distressing about this whole process is it was not transparent. They quickly gavelled in the committee, they voted, and then they left. And everyone was left wondering what happened. The House Fiscal Agency has released some details. The state budget office has released some details. But it is still not clear sitting here today what exactly all got cut.
There is a list of things on your Substack that is extremely extensive, stuff that touches every corner of this state. Some things that we've been talking about here on this show. We talk about that BAMF Cancer Center here in Detroit. We talk about the Motown Museum. Mm-hmm. There's just so many things. If I think I remember correctly, there's like $6 million in police infrastructure for the city of Dearborn. There's stuff in Troy. There's stuff everywhere. This is going to create havoc with local budgets, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was $500,000 for an emergency shelter in Sault Ste. Marie where I grew up. So it's all over the state. And the reason why is, as part of that obscure law, the House could only cut an entire appropriation balance. They couldn't cut project by project. So it was an all or nothing approach where, if they wanted to cut it, they had to cut it all across the state, whoever hadn't finished spending down their balances yet. In addition to those local projects, $18.5 million for the RX Kids program to provide cash support to pregnant mothers and shortly after they've given birth. That's a program that was just announced that they expanded into other communities, both up north and here in southeastern Michigan. And now they're left wondering, can they still follow through on their plans?
One thing I noticed was pulling funding for wigs for kids with cancer.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. It's like that heartbreaking and frankly, quite obscene that some of these cuts touching, the most, sensitive of projects. And again, things that were already underway, nonprofits that don't have a lot of money in their pocket and we're counting on this to deliver on their services.
So why? This seems irresponsible. And I say that in a nonpartisan way, because to me, when you make an agreement and you say, okay, Steve, I'm going to give you $100 for this thing. And I say, nah, but you've already spent the money or halfway spent the money. I'm basically screwing you. Like I'm hurting the situation here. This feels like breaking of an agreement, even though it seems like legally this is possible.
Yes, it's spot on. I mean, they really, broke the deal that was made with these grant recipients. And, I started my career 20 years ago in the state budget office in New Jersey. And during the Great Recession, we had to cut a lot of things, including previous appropriations, but we never went after something that was an active agreement where we had an obligation. Maybe we legally could have somehow, but those were always off the table. Because again, project is underway, the agreement is settled. You only look at things that are available to cancel, that they're no longer needed. There's a surplus balance, or maybe the project agreed to be canceled, not things that are actively underway, and now they're left holding the bag.
I feel like this rug pull also makes it so people who do business with the state maybe can't trust it, which long-term is a dangerous thing and is reminiscent of what we're seeing up in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard the word thrown around a lot, both here in the state of Michigan and at the national level. What do people want? They want certainty. When you have a deal, when you have a budget, you expect them to follow through on it, not to cancel it after the fact. And as you noted, it just seems like, just like in Washington, now in Lansing, the approach is all about how do I win the game as opposed to responsible governing.
Well, some of the things that Republicans say around this, especially Speaker Matt Hall, says that, this is about waste, fraud, and abuse. Do you buy that line?
No, I mean, he was even quoted shortly after that as saying that, well, really, this is about, leverage in future negotiations. Because remember, these were line items from a budget that was passed when Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate back in 2024. And now if they want these appropriations restored, these projects restored, they're going to have to negotiate with him in the new year to add those appropriations back. And I'm sure they won't all succeed.
Well, because some laws have changed, correct?
That's correct. So as part of a bargain with Speaker Hall, the Senate and the House both passed earmark reforms that were similar to what they tried out this last budget cycle, but now they're codified in state law. The governor signed it as well. Now going forward, we'll have earmark transparency where before an earmark item, like some of these items that were cut right now, will need to be posted 45 days in advance. They'll have to have public hearings, and that's all great. The governor and the Senate got on board with that. Transparency is amazing, but the bargain was that deal would be for all things going forward, starting in January. And now some of these items might not even be eligible. The law says a for-profit entity is not eligible for what's called now a legislatively directed spending item. So some of them that are private entities that for some of these projects underway, they might not be eligible unless there's some other solution to be had.
Now, you are the former budget director for the city of Detroit. How does this impact municipalities? And since you work with clients in the nonprofit sector, I know nonprofits that have messaged me and they're losing $500,000, $2 million, that kind of thing. What do you do in this situation? Like, what's the next step?
Step one is figure out, did my funding actually get cut? Because it's not 100% clear. But you're right. $7 million for the Detroit Zoo is at risk. There was $1.5 million for the City of Detroit right-to-counsel program. These are funds that were already being spent. And now how do we plug that hole? Right now, the city is preparing a budget for the new year and with the new mayor. And, if some of these things are things the city might need to restore funding for, that's going to hit the city's bottom line.
So for you as a professional who works with a number of clients, long term, what could the damage be of setting this precedent?
So now, if you get a grant, you might not be certain you'll actually get it in the end. And if I was a grant recipient, I would try to negotiate with the state to get the money up front rather than waiting to be reimbursed.
That's a key thing I want to mention because I don't think a lot of people realize this. Whether it's grants or often project awards or whatever, very rarely do they send the check first. You have to find a way, whether you work with a bank or something like that, get the money, and then the state reimburses that, which is kind of wild.
Oh, yeah, that's correct. There's projects all over the city and across the state where, nonprofits and other entities, local governments, they have to rustle up the cash themselves first, and then they get paid back. That's usually how a grant works, whether it's from the federal government or the state government. And now, without that trust, and that's really what's at stake here is trust in government. If you can't count on that, do you even pursue the project? With state funding, maybe you just take that off the table entirely because they're not a good faith act, or at least not seen as that now.
Well, that worries me a lot because here in the city of Detroit and a lot of the suburbs as well, there's so much that is dependent on grants, funding, tax, like all these things. If the chance is that you won't get paid for your grant, that's just going to make people just not do the project. It really worries me, especially here in Detroit.
Yeah, very few projects in Detroit can get off the ground without some kind of public subsidy. Whether we talk about tax abatements, we talk about tax captures, and just cash grants that help cover a financing gap. Doing projects here in the city and elsewhere in the state is very expensive, and you usually have to pull together a number of funding streams to get a deal done. And really, another consequence of these budget cuts is economic development legislation that was moving through the House and Senate this month are all off the table now. They'll probably get revisited in the new year. But again, this action poisoned the well, and all things have just stopped through the end of the year.
So what could be the next steps going forward for, let's say you're somebody who, let's say you're a municipality or you work with someone to try to get some of that money back, or are they just done?
So I'd say, again, if you know that your funding has been cut, reach out to your local legislator that originally sponsored it. They'll be your conduit to try to get it restored. Again, there's at least two routes. The state could pass a supplemental appropriations bill that restores it in the very near term, sometime in January. Because again, they lapsed the money, so the money is available to appropriate again. Or alternatively, it could be part of the fiscal year 27 budget process, which is coming up. The governor will propose her budget in February, and then the House and Senate will take up the next budget in the spring.
What do regular listeners, let's say you're not connected these dollars directly, what is the takeaway for somebody listening to this who's like, well, I'm not losing a grant. Why does it matter to me?
Well, it all comes back to, kind of faith and confidence in your state government and its ability to deliver on services. I think we've heard a lot recently that one of Michigan's biggest challenges is a great deal of uncertainty in both policy as well as funding. How do you move forward without, kind of knowing how things are going to work in the years ahead? And then after they even happen, that they'll stick.
Yeah, candidly, that is a piece of feedback I have heard over a number of years. Whether inconsistency in economic policy, the inconsistency in decisions, and this just ups the ante to a whole nother level, and it makes me worry about, what do we have here? I'm very concerned, honestly, going into 2026 about the future of this state. I'm very concerned, and this doubles it down because, to me, I don't feel like we should be patterning whatever you think of the individual projects. This isn't professional. This isn't the way things should be done. And patterning what's happening in Washington is a road to ruin. It's a road to ruin in my mind.
Yeah, and there's not supposed to be anything wrong with divided government. Divided government can work perfectly fine through compromise, negotiation. But now if you compromise and negotiate and arrive at a deal, but then it can get canceled later, what's your incentive to make a deal if your partners aren't acting in good faith?
I would love to hear people's feedback. dailydetroit@gmail.com or 313-789-3211. Steve Watson, partner and COO at Watson & Yates. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you and adding some very intelligent clarity to this conversation.
Well, thank you, Jer. If people want to check out the Substack, it's at watsonyates.substack.com.
And if you haven't already, make sure that you follow Daily Detroit on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get shows. And thank you to our members on Patreon who are pushing Metro Detroit forward and pushing the conversation forward by being a member at patreon.com/dailydetroit. With that, I am Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.